Tonight, we journey into the story of Rome. You stand at the edge of the Tiber River, where the water glimmers faintly beneath the moonlight. Hills rise around you, 7 in all, crowned not yet with marble temples, but with rough huts of timber and clay. Somewhere in the hush of the early dawn, shepherds call to their flocks, and smoke curls lazily from hearths where families prepare simple meals. It seems an ordinary place, modest, humble, but in these quiet beginnings lies the seed of a world-spanning civilization. You can almost hear the echo of destiny carried by the breeze, though in truth, if you lived here, you'd be too busy chasing goats and patching roofs to notice. And you might struggle to endure what they once lived through: raids, famine, exile, and the constant burden of survival. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you'd like, share your location and your local time in the comments. It's soothing to imagine his journey unrolling across time zones like a paper scroll. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your journey begins with a story told in hushed tones by firelight. Romulus and Remus, twin boys abandoned on the riverbank, left to die by royal decree. A she-wolf, fierce yet nurturing, finds them, suckles them, and keeps them alive until a shepherd and his wife raise them as their own. It is myth, of course, or at least historians still wonder whether there was any sliver of truth buried inside. But it mattered profoundly, for the Romans believed it, and belief is as potent as fact when it shapes the soul of a people. Romulus, strong and ambitious, eventually quarrels with his brother. A line is scratched into the earth, a fragile boundary between brothers, and when Remus crosses it in defiance, Romulus kills him. Thus, Rome is born in blood, a theme that will echo through its long and complex tale. You may chuckle softly here, because really, what other city could claim as its founding motto, "Don't step over my line, or else"? Beneath the myth, archaeologists trace early Rome to settlers of the Latins, a simple people dwelling among hills and marshes, tilling poor soil and herding livestock. They built huts on the Palatine Hill, one of the 7, and clustered together for protection. Their world was small: muddy paths, crude tools, and meals of grain porridge. Yet they were not entirely isolated. Traders drifted along the Tiber, bringing goods and gossip from Etruria to the north and Campania to the south. Rome, from its earliest days, was a crossroads. Kings ruled in those first centuries, or so the tradition tells us. 7 in all, beginning with Romulus himself. The first kings are half shadow, half legend. Numa Pompilius, who, they said, tamed the wild Romans with laws and rites, weaving religion into daily life. Tullus Hostilius, more warlike, brought Alba Longa to heal. Ancus Marcius, a builder, founded the port of Ostia, where the Tiber meets the sea, planting the seeds of Rome's maritime power. Whether these figures were flesh and blood, or mere stories sculpted to explain Rome's customs, no one can say with certainty. Historians still debate whether the kings were a continuous line, or whether Rome was instead ruled by councils of elders. And yet, as you drift through these early reigns, you notice how each tale matches the qualities Rome cherished. One king embodies discipline, another expansion, another piety. Rome was not only remembering the past, but teaching future generations what it meant to be Roman. Think of it as the world's longest bedtime story, except this one ends up marching legions across continents. Picture the early Forum, just a marshy clearing between hills, later drained by the Cloaca Maxima, a great sewer system whose foundations still whisper beneath modern Rome. Imagine markets springing up there, the calls of merchants offering pottery, salted fish, or rough cloth. Already, the Romans were practicing something they would later perfect, turning muddy ground into solid stone, chaos into order, wilderness into a city. You pause at the sound of distant festivals. Romans were nothing if not celebratory, honoring their gods with feasts and games. Livestock are sacrificed, wine flows, and songs rise into the night air. A small town, yes, but already bursting with ritual and pride. And hovering above it all is the wolf, the she-wolf who suckled the twins, carved in bronze and worshipped in symbol. She represents both ferocity and nurturing, a paradox the Romans wore proudly. To be Roman was to be harsh yet protective, to conquer yet to build, to endure through strife and emerge stronger. By the end of these first centuries, Rome is still little more than a cluster of huts and ambitious legend. But the seed is there, watered by myth, fed by neighbors, growing in confidence. You can sense it, can't you? The city is restless, like a youth just coming of age, unaware of its own future might. And soon, neighbors to the north, the powerful Etruscans, will cast their shadow upon it, changing Rome forever. You step forward into the centuries when Rome lies under the shadow of its northern neighbors, the Etruscans. Their towns gleam with terracotta rooftops and finely carved tombs. Their artisans mold bronze into armor and jewelry, and their priests peer into the flight of birds or the livers of sacrificed animals to read the will of the gods. To the simple Latins clustered around the Tiber, the Etruscans appear almost otherworldly, sophisticated, wealthy, and intimidating. And soon, they are not merely neighbors, but rulers. According to tradition, Rome's last 3 kings were of Etruscan blood: Tarquinius Priscus, Servius Tullius, and Tarquinius Superbus. Historians still debate the accuracy of this sequence. Were they truly kings or later inventions to explain Etruscan influence? But no one doubts the mark these rulers left behind. They reshaped Rome's identity, pulling it from a rustic settlement into the beginnings of a true city. You stroll through the early Forum again, but now it no longer feels like a swampy gathering place. Under Servius Tullius, the city's boundaries expand. A wall encircles the hills, defining Rome's limits with stone instead of legend. Tarquinius Priscus begins great works. He builds the Circus Maximus, where horses thunder around the track, and lays foundations for the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill. Imagine standing there as stones rise slowly, hauled by oxen, the shouts of workers filling the air. Rome, once mud and thatch, is becoming a place of grandeur. The Etruscans bring more than buildings, they bring order. The Romans adopt their symbols of power: the fasces, a bundle of rods with an axe at its heart, emblem of authority that future magistrates will carry. They learn Etruscan methods of augury, studying omens to guide decisions. Even the toga, that iconic Roman garment, owes something to Etruscan fashion. You can't help but smile at the thought: the future conquerors of the Mediterranean, draped in a style they borrowed from those they once feared. Daily life changes too. Imagine walking through the streets. Artisans craft pottery, smiths hammer iron, markets buzz with goods brought from far afield. The Etruscans connect Rome into broader trade networks. Salt, grain, wine, and slaves flow in and out. For a people who once lived on thin porridge, it feels like a feast. Still, beneath the bustle, there lingers unease. Rome may be growing rich, but it is not yet free. Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, embodies that tension. His rule, tradition says, becomes tyrannical, weighed down by arrogance and cruelty. He completes the great temple of Jupiter, but also crushes opposition. And then comes the scandal that breaks the monarchy forever: the outrage against Lucretia, a noblewoman whose tragic fate at the hands of the king's son sparks fury among the Roman elite. Whether this story unfolded exactly as told, or was polished by later generations, historians still wonder. But the moral rang clear for the Romans: no king must ever lord unchecked power over the city. And so, the monarchy ends. Rome casts out Tarquin, closes its gates against kings, and vows to govern itself through councils and elections. In truth, it is less the triumph of the common people and more the assertion of the patrician class, wealthy aristocrats unwilling to bow to a tyrant. But in time, the idea that Rome was governed by laws, not men, will take root. You can almost hear the stirrings of the Republic beating faintly under the stone foundations of the old temples. Yet, for all their resentment, the Romans never entirely severed from their Etruscan past. Look around you. The grandeur of their religious rituals, the curved arches in their architecture, the pomp of their symbols, all whisper of Etruscan heritage. Rome, as it will do countless times in the future, takes what it learns from others, reshapes it, and claims it as its own. As you walk out from the shadows of Etruria, the city seems taller, sturdier, more ambitious. Its people, once subjects, now proclaim themselves citizens. Still, you can sense the tension. Freedom is intoxicating, but it is also fragile. And, like a young athlete untested by hardship, Rome must learn to wield its new independence wisely. Soon, the Republic will rise, a system both noble and flawed, born of fear of kings, but destined to govern an empire. But before you rush ahead, pause here at the threshold. Remember the huts that once stood on the Palatine, the marsh that became the Forum, the wolf that nursed abandoned twins, and the kings, half myth, half memory, who built walls, temples, and pride. For Rome is already showing the pattern that will define it: to borrow, to adapt, to transform, to endure. You linger now in the moment after kings are swept away, when the word rex, king, becomes so bitter to Roman ears that it will echo as an insult for centuries. In its place, the Republic rises, not as a sudden creation, but as a cautious experiment. You walk into a city buzzing with debate, its people divided into classes, yet bound by a fragile common purpose. Never again shall one man hold absolute rule. At the heart of this new order sits the Senate, a gathering of patricians, Rome's noble families, who claim to speak for the city. Picture them wrapped in togas with purple stripes, their sandals crunching against the paving stones as they stride into the curia to deliberate. The Senate does not legislate at first, but its prestige weighs like iron. Advice from these men carries the force of command. Still, Romans are wary of concentrating power even here, so they establish consuls, two leaders elected yearly, equal in authority, each able to veto the other. It is like giving Rome two captains at the helm, an arrangement both ingenious and awkward, a recipe for balance but also for rivalry. And yet the Republic is not only about the patricians. The plebeians, the ordinary citizens, demand their share of voice. At first, their role is meager. They can vote in assemblies, but real decisions are guided by aristocratic hands. Tensions build, like steam trapped beneath the lid of a pot. You can almost hear the murmur in the streets. Why should noble birth decide who speaks for Rome? Why should the spoils of victory flow only to the few? Historians still wonder how much of this early struggle is exact fact and how much is later legend, polished by generations proud of their institutions. But the struggle of the orders, as it is often called, leaves an undeniable mark. Plebeians withdraw from the city in protest. Imagine the drama, entire families packing up and marching to the Sacred Mount, refusing to return until their rights are recognized. Out of this defiance comes the office of the tribune, sacred protectors of the people, armed with veto power to shield plebeians from injustice. You can almost smile at the cleverness of it. Give the commoners guardians who cannot be touched, and suddenly the system steadies again. Meanwhile, laws begin to take shape. In the mid-5th century BCE, the 12 tables are engraved on bronze and set up in the forum for all to see. No longer hidden in the minds of priests or manipulated by the powerful, law is written and public. The rules are sometimes harsh: death for minor theft, exile for lesser crimes. But they are rules, and they are equal in their application. Think of it as the Romans' way of saying, no surprises, everyone plays by the same scroll. It is crude justice, yes, but a foundation nonetheless. Culture shifts too. The Republic nurtures a civic religion where public duty and private life intertwine. Families honor the lares, household spirits, while the state venerates Jupiter, Mars, and Vesta with grand rituals. Festivals spill into the streets, blending sacred and social. You might laugh quietly at the thought: politics, religion, and family dinners all mixed together? It sounds chaotic, but to the Romans, it is harmony. And through it all, the Roman character hardens. Discipline is drilled into the citizen soldiers who serve in the legions. Each man knows he is not just fighting for himself, but for the Republic, for the survival of a system that insists no tyrant shall return. This devotion is not sentimental, it is practical. For if Rome falls, all its citizens lose their rights, their voice, their hard-won freedom. Even in these formative years, there are cracks. Wealthy families still dominate politics. Corruption seeps in, as favors and promises weigh heavier than fairness. The plebeians gain rights slowly, but never fully. Inequality persists like an ache in the bones. Historians still debate whether Rome was ever truly democratic, or whether it was always an oligarchy in disguise. Yet the illusion of balance, the dance between classes, keeps the Republic alive. Imagine standing once more in the Forum at dusk. Torches flicker against the marble of new temples, merchants pack away their goods, and senators drift home deep in thought. The murmur of voices rises, arguments, negotiations, whispers of ambition. Rome is no longer a mere cluster of huts, nor a city of kings. It is a republic, defined by laws and citizens, proud and precarious all at once. And as night falls, the Republic prepares for its next trial. Freedom is exhilarating, but freedom demands defense. Soon, Rome will look beyond its walls, testing its system not only against inner tensions, but against the peoples of Italy. The legions are restless, and the peninsula awaits. You wake to the sound of boots crunching on gravel roads, to the glint of iron spears rising with the dawn. Rome is no longer content to huddle within its walls. With kings gone and the Republic steadying itself, the city begins to stretch outward, testing its strength against the rest of Italy. You can feel the energy, restless, disciplined, and oddly confident for a city still small compared to its neighbors. At first, the wars are local, skirmishes with the Latin tribes around them. These cousins share language and customs, yet alliances shift like sand, and Rome must prove its dominance or risk fading into obscurity. Victory comes slowly, then steadily. Rome defeats Alba Longa, absorbs smaller towns, and binds them not by destruction, but by clever treaties. The conquered are not erased, but woven into Rome's fabric, granted partial rights, asked to share soldiers, bound by roads. Imagine the strategy. Instead of scattering enemies, Rome turns them into allies, a method that will become its signature. The Samnites prove tougher. High in the Apennine Mountains, they are fierce fighters, launching ambushes from rocky passes. The Samnite Wars test Rome's discipline brutally. At the Caudian Forks, Roman legions are trapped and humiliated, forced to pass under a yoke of spears and surrender. You might wince, imagining the shame. Proud soldiers reduced to crawling like cattle. And yet, Rome learns. Defeat is not the end, it is a lesson. The legions reorganize, tactics evolve, and, in time, the Samnites are broken. Historians still debate whether Rome's resilience was sheer luck or sheer genius, but the pattern is clear. Rome falls, then rises stronger. Beyond these struggles lies the looming presence of the Greek cities of southern Italy, Magna Graecia. Tarentum, proud and wealthy, resists Rome's encroachment. To their aid comes Pyrrhus of Epirus, a warrior king with elephants at his command. Imagine the scene: Roman soldiers staring wide-eyed as massive beasts rumble toward them, trunks raised, tusks gleaming. It must have seemed like monsters torn from myth. The battles are brutal, and though Pyrrhus wins, his victories cost so dearly they give birth to a new phrase, a Pyrrhic victory. You can almost hear Romans grumble afterward. Yes, he won, but not for long. And they are right. Pyrrhus retreats, his elephants gone, and Rome claims the south. All of Italy now bends toward Rome. But the conquest is not just about spears and shields. Rome builds roads, straight, enduring paths that slice through hills and marshes, binding allies and garrisons together. The Via Appia, the queen of roads, stretches like a ribbon from Rome to Capua, later to Brundisium, and you walk upon it marveling at its precision. Stone upon stone, fitted so tightly that centuries cannot break it. Alongside roads come colonies, planted like seeds of Rome across the land, carrying language, law, and loyalty wherever they grow. You pause at a small village freshly incorporated into Rome's sphere. A local farmer complains about taxes, while his son boasts of marching with the legions. This is the paradox of Roman rule: burdensome yet empowering, heavy with obligation, yet offering a taste of shared glory. The system works because it offers just enough to keep resentment in check. Historians still wonder whether Rome was uniquely clever or merely lucky to strike this balance, but the result is undeniable. Italy becomes not a patchwork of rivals, but the core of Rome's rising power. Culture shifts with conquest. Latin spreads, mingling with Greek philosophy and Etruscan ritual. Temples rise on new foundations, games are staged in conquered towns, and Roman law begins to seep outward. You might chuckle gently at how quickly Rome insists its ways are universal. Conquer a city on Monday, hold a Roman festival there by Sunday. Yet this confidence, even arrogance, is part of what holds the Republic together. By the time you look up again, Rome stands as master of the peninsula. The wolf of legend, once scrapping for survival, now prowls with pride. Its citizens, hardened by war and discipline, see themselves as destined to rule. And, as merchants sail across the seas, bringing whispers of wealth and power beyond Italy, Rome's gaze drifts outward. To the west lies Carthage, wealthy and vast, a rival that will test Rome's ambitions like nothing before. For now, though, you breathe in the dust of Italian roads, the clang of blacksmiths forging weapons, the laughter of soldiers boasting of their campaigns. Rome has bound Italy in chains of alliance and stone, and soon the Republic will test its strength against an empire across the sea. The salt air stings your nose as you step onto the deck of a Roman galley. Oars rise and fall in perfect rhythm, water splashing against the hull, while the horizon stretches wide and blue. Rome, once bound to the hills and valleys of Italy, now looks beyond the sea. And across that sea lies a rival as formidable as any the Republic has ever faced: Carthage. Carthage is ancient, wealthy, and cunning, a Phoenician colony turned maritime empire. Its harbors teem with ships, its merchants traffic in gold, ivory, and spices from distant lands. If Rome is a wolf prowling Italy, Carthage is a lion ruling the seas. Their collision is inevitable, and when it comes, it will be known as the Punic Wars, struggles that span more than a century and decide who commands the Mediterranean. The First Punic War erupts over Sicily, an island so close you can almost toss a stone across from Italy's tip. Rome, land power that it is, faces a daunting challenge: Carthage's navy. At first, Romans flounder, their ships clumsy and their sailors inexperienced. But in true Roman fashion, they adapt. They invent the corvus, a boarding device like a giant gangplank with a spike at its end, turning sea battles into land battles atop decks. Picture the shock of Carthaginian sailors as disciplined Roman legionaries storm their ships, not swimmers, but fighters, turning the sea into a floating battlefield. Historians still wonder whether the corvus was brilliant engineering or desperate improvisation, but it tilts the war. By 241 BCE, Carthage surrenders Sicily. Rome has its first province beyond the peninsula. But the rivalry is far from over. You march onward to the Second Punic War, and here steps onto the stage one of history's most legendary figures, Hannibal Barca. Imagine him, fierce eyes burning, vowing before his father to hate Rome forever. In 218 BCE, he does the unthinkable. He leads his army, complete with elephants, across the Alps in winter. You shiver as you picture it, soldiers slipping on icy paths, elephants trumpeting in terror as snow and rock tumble around them. And yet, against all odds, Hannibal descends into Italy with a force that will shake Rome to its core. The battles that follow sear themselves into memory. At Cannae, Hannibal envelops a larger Roman army, killing tens of thousands in a single day. The fields are littered with bodies, a disaster so immense that even now historians marvel at his genius. You might almost whisper, "Game over, Rome," but no, the Republic refuses to die. Defeat hardens resolve, and Rome rallies. It avoids pitched battles, harasses Hannibal, and eventually sends General Scipio across the sea to strike Carthage itself. At Zama in 202 BCE, Scipio, later called Africanus, defeats Hannibal, and Carthage bows low. Yet Carthage lingers, wounded but alive. Rome cannot tolerate it. The Third Punic War, decades later, is short and merciless. Carthage, besieged, burns. You hear the crackle of flames, the screams of citizens, the groan of walls collapsing. According to tradition, the city is leveled, and salt is sown into the soil so nothing will grow. Historians still wonder whether that salting ever truly happened, or whether it was later symbolic flourish. But the point is clear: Carthage is gone. The Mediterranean is now Rome's. Sicily, Spain, North Africa, these provinces swell the Republic's wealth. Grain flows in, slaves are shackled and marched into markets, silver fills Roman coffers. But with victory comes strain. The spoils of empire do not enrich all equally. Wealth concentrates in the hands of the few, while small farmers struggle, their lands ruined by war or bought up by nobles. The seeds of future conflict are already sown, even as Rome celebrates. Still, for the moment, you savor the triumph. Imagine standing in the Forum as a triumphal procession passes. Generals in golden armor, elephants paraded in chains, wagons filled with treasures. Citizens cheer, incense burns, trumpets blare. Rome, once humbled by kings and Samnites, now straddles the seas. The Punic Wars have made it not just a power, but the power. Yet you also notice the unease beneath the pageantry. Veterans grumble about lost farms. Senators argue more fiercely than before. Ambition grows sharper, wealth more intoxicating. Rome has conquered Carthage, but in doing so, it has awakened something dangerous within itself. For now, though, the wolf feasts. The Republic has torn down its greatest rival, and its gaze turns eastward, towards Greece, Asia, and beyond. And as the oars dip once more into the sea, the Mediterranean begins to bear a new name, whispered by sailors: Mare Nostrum, our sea. You walk back into Rome, the scent of victory still clinging to the air. Carthage is ash and dust. The Mediterranean bows to Roman ships, and yet, instead of harmony, you find a city straining under the weight of its own success. Rome has won the world, but in doing so, it has unsettled itself. Wealth pours in from conquered provinces, grain from Sicily and Egypt, silver from Spain, art and philosophy from Greece. Markets brim with exotic goods, and villas on the hills gleam with marble and mosaics. Senators dine on delicacies their ancestors never dreamed of, while merchants grow fat from trade. But below, in the narrow streets, small farmers slip into ruin. Their fields, neglected while they march to war, are bought up by aristocrats who merge them into great estates, latifundia, worked by slaves captured abroad. Picture it. Men who once fought to defend the Republic return home to find themselves homeless, replaced by chained foreigners. You might shake your head softly here. It's the ancient version of being laid off by a machine. Slavery becomes Rome's engine, but also its poison. In markets, you hear the cries of captives sold like cattle, their hands bound, their future stolen. They build the roads, toil in the fields, and serve in households. Rome prospers, yes, but at a cost that will one day explode in rebellion. Historians still wonder whether Rome could have thrived without such reliance, or whether slavery was the iron beneath its marble. Culture shifts too. Victorious generals bring home Greek tutors, philosophers, and playwrights. Roman youth quote Homer, study Plato, and debate in shaded porticos. Some Romans welcome this flood of Greek influence, calling it refinement. Others sneer, fearing that old Roman virtues of discipline and simplicity are drowning in luxury. You can almost hear the grumbles in taverns. We conquered Greece, and now Greece conquers us. The Senate, meant to be the Republic's anchor, grows more corrupt. Wealth buys votes, alliances are struck in secret, and ambition turns darker. Ordinary citizens, once proud of their role, feel increasingly excluded. Bread and circuses distract the masses, but murmurs of discontent ripple through the streets. Occasionally, these murmurs swell into crisis. Provinces revolt, soldiers mutiny, even allies demand more rights. Rome stretches thin, dispatching legions to put out fires across its vast holdings. Yet each time, it adapts. New governors, new taxes, new settlements, always patching, never resting. It feels a little like trying to juggle while standing on a moving cart. Impressive, but doomed to topple eventually. And still, the triumphs keep coming. Macedon bows, Greece becomes a province, Pergamum bequeaths its kingdom to Rome. The Forum fills with spoils, statues of gods, libraries of scrolls, treasures hauled by sweating slaves. Rome is not just a city anymore, it is becoming an empire in all but name. Walk through a Roman street at dusk, and you see the contradictions clearly. A senator's mansion towers above a beggar's hovel. A Greek tutor recites poetry to noble children, while a slave girl scrubs marble floors. Historians sell trinkets in the market, their armor long pawned. Rome is rich, dazzling, unequal, restless. Historians still debate whether this period was Rome's high point or the beginning of its unraveling. The Republic's institutions survive, but they bend under strain. The Senate clings to tradition, yet cannot control the ambitions of generals who command loyal armies abroad. The citizens cheer victories, yet hunger for reform. Rome grows more powerful with each conquest, but also more fragile, like a statue gleaming in sunlight while cracks spread unseen beneath its surface. As you stand once more in the forum, voices echo around you. Merchants haggle, senators argue, slaves shuffle past with baskets of bread. Above all, you hear the hum of a city too successful for its own good. Conquest has enriched Rome, but it has also corroded it, setting the stage for reformers, rebels, and civil strife. For now, the wolf licks its bloody paws, satisfied but restless. The Republic is still strong, but within the shadows, change stirs. And soon, men will rise to challenge the Senate itself, crying for justice, shaking the city to its very foundations. You step into a restless Rome, where voices rise not in triumph, but in protest. The Republic's victories have brought wealth to the few and misery to the many, and now reformers and rebels begin to shake the city's foundations. The air feels heavier here, like a storm waiting to break. The first thunderclap comes with the Gracchi brothers. Tiberius Gracchus, a young tribune, walks into the forum with a vision: return land to the poor, restore dignity to veterans, and limit the greedy expansion of aristocrats. Imagine the stir this causes: patricians clutching their togas, farmers cheering in the streets. Tiberius pushes his laws, but his defiance of senatorial power enrages the elite. In 133 BCE, violence erupts. Clubs are raised, chaos spills across the forum, and Tiberius is struck down. Historians still debate whether his fall was justice, necessity, or simply murder wrapped in politics. A decade later, his brother Gaius takes up the cause. Bolder, sharper, he extends his reforms. Grain subsidies for the poor, colonies for the landless, broader citizenship for allies. For a moment, it seems as though Rome might truly change. But again, opposition stiffens. Riots break out, and Gaius, trapped and abandoned, falls on his own sword. You might sigh here, recognizing a tragic pattern. Idealists cut down by the very republic they seek to save. But the cries for justice do not fade. In the countryside, slaves rebel. The most famous of them, Spartacus, a gladiator, leads tens of thousands in open revolt. Picture it: slaves armed with kitchen knives and farm tools, defeating legion after legion, their banners waving across Italy. For 2 years, Spartacus terrifies Rome, until finally crushed. His followers are nailed to crosses along the Appian Way, a grim warning stretching for miles. The Republic survives, but the image of slaves marching free lingers like smoke. Historians still wonder whether Spartacus dreamed of overthrowing Rome or simply of escape, but either way, his defiance rattles the city. And then come the generals. Gaius Marius, a man of humble birth, rises to prominence by reshaping the army. He opens enlistment to the poor, promising land in return for service. The legions, once loyal to the Republic, become loyal to their commanders. Soldiers cheer their general's name more loudly than the Senate's decrees. You can almost feel the ground shift beneath your feet. Rome's balance is breaking. His rival, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, marches armies not against foreign foes, but against Rome itself. Imagine the shock. Legions storming the city gates, soldiers occupying the forum, senators fleeing in terror. Sulla claims dictatorship, rewrites laws, and posts lists of enemies to be hunted down. Blood stains the streets where debates once echoed. Rome, which prided itself on freedom, now trembles under terror. And yet, when Sulla steps down voluntarily, you hear the citizens murmur: was it relief or dread of what precedent he left behind? Through these years, the Republic feels less like a shared state and more like a battlefield of classes and ambitions. Plebeians demand bread, slaves dream of freedom, soldiers fight for generals, and senators cling to fading authority. The Forum no longer feels like the heart of a community, but like an arena, every speech a contest, every law a weapon. And yet, out of this chaos, Rome grows sharper. Its resilience, its refusal to collapse entirely, astonishes. Even in the midst of reform and rebellion, roads are built, provinces administered, temples dedicated. The Republic staggers, bloodied but alive. You might almost laugh at its stubbornness. It's like a fighter who refuses to stay down no matter how many times he's hit. Still, you can sense where the path leads. The balance that once defined the Republic is breaking apart. Generals wield armies like private property. Citizens look less to laws and more to charismatic leaders. Ambition has found its stage, and soon it will stride forward in the form of a man whose name still echoes, Gaius Julius Caesar. But for now, you linger among the cries of the reformers, the clash of swords in rebellion, and the heavy tread of armies marching where they never should have marched. Rome has survived kings, Carthage, and conquest, but its greatest trial is now within itself. You walk into a Rome buzzing with anticipation, its cobblestones alive with whispers of a man whose ambition outshines them all, Gaius Julius Caesar. The Republic, already battered by reform and rebellion, now finds itself caught between loyalty to tradition and the magnetism of personalities too great to be contained. And Caesar, with his sharp wit, dazzling charm, and relentless drive, is about to push the Republic past its breaking point. First, though, you see him as a young man. Picture him slipping through Rome's streets in a plain toga, dodging the assassins of Sulla's dictatorship, marked already as ambitious, clever, and dangerous to the old guard. He survives exile, wins allies, and slowly climbs the ladder of Roman politics. His rise is not straight, but cunning, built on favors, debts, and speeches that stir the crowd. You can almost hear him now in the Forum, voice ringing with promises of reform, his words wrapping the people like a warm cloak. In 60 BCE, Caesar forms an alliance historians still debate, the First Triumvirate. He binds himself with Pompey the Great, Rome's celebrated general, and Crassus, the richest man in the city. Together, they bypass the Senate, pooling money, influence, and armies. It is politics at its rawest, not noble debate, but a backroom deal. You might smirk at the thought. It's proof that even in ancient times, politics thrived on handshakes in the shadows. But alliances built on ambition rarely last. Crassus dies in the east, Pompey drifts toward the Senate, and Caesar marches into glory. His conquest of Gaul is breathtaking. For nearly a decade, he leads legions north, crossing rivers, scaling mountains, clashing with tribes. At Alasia, he surrounds Vercingetorix and his warriors, building walls around the city and walls around his own army, a double ring of fortifications that strangles the Gallic revolt. The victory is absolute, and Caesar returns not just as a general, but as a legend. His commentaries, written in crisp prose, spread his fame across Rome. Historians still wonder whether he exaggerated his exploits, but even stripped of embellishment, his feats dazzle. The Senate grows uneasy. Pompey, once his ally, now fears his power. They demand Caesar disband his army and return as a private citizen. And here the fateful moment arrives, 49 BCE. Caesar stands on the banks of the Rubicon, the border of his province. To cross with his army is treason, a declaration of civil war. He hesitates, then utters words that echo still. Alea iacta est. The die is cast. You hear the splash of hooves as his legions wade forward. The Republic will never be the same. Civil war erupts. Caesar marches swiftly, seizing Italy, scattering Pompey's forces. At Pharsalus in Greece, he crushes Pompey's army despite being outnumbered. Pompey flees to Egypt, only to be murdered there, his head presented to Caesar in grisly greeting. You can almost sigh here. It's the kind of political favor no one really wants.
Caesar mourns publicly, but in truth, his last rival is gone. And yet, his triumph is uneasy. He is declared dictator, first briefly, then for 10 years, then for life. He enacts reforms, reducing debt, expanding the Senate, founding colonies, even revising the calendar into the Julian form that still guides us. Citizens cheer his generosity, veterans honor his rewards. But whispers grow louder. Is Caesar not a king in all but name? Remember how Rome hated kings. The word rex still tastes bitter, and though Caesar wears no crown, he holds its power. The Senate cracks. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, senators surround him in the Curia. Daggers flash, robes darken, and Caesar falls, pierced by betrayal. Legend says he looked upon Brutus, his ally turned assassin, and whispered, "Et tu, Brute." Historians still wonder whether those words were ever spoken or were later theater. But the effect is undeniable. Caesar is gone, and Rome plunges again into chaos. You pause, taking in the silence after the storm. Rome has lost its greatest general and its most dangerous threat to the Republic. Yet in killing Caesar, the senators hoped to restore the old ways. But instead, they unleashed new rivalries, new wars, and a hunger for order no Senate could provide. The Forum stands uneasy, its marble floors stained with memory. Citizens grieve and cheer at once. The Republic, already fragile, is now broken. And in the shadows, Caesar's heir rises, a quiet youth with cold eyes, destined to finish what his uncle began.
The Forum still echoes with Caesar's death cries, yet before the marble can cool, his legacy coils itself around the city like a serpent. You glance upward and see a bright star reported to have blazed in the night sky after his funeral, the Cetus Iulium, the Julian star. Many Romans take it as a sign Caesar has become a god. And in the shadow of that new divinity steps a boy who seems unassuming at first, Gaius Octavius, Caesar's great-nephew and adopted heir. Thin, sickly, barely 20, he hardly looks like a savior of Rome, but appearances often lie. Octavian, later Augustus, begins carefully. He calls himself simply the son of the divine Julius, gathering loyalty not by bluster but by quiet determination. Mark Antony, Caesar's fiery lieutenant, underestimates him, mocking him as a child. You can almost smile here. Antony should have known better. Octavian moves with patience, securing legions, money, and support. Historians still debate whether he was lucky or brilliant, but soon enough he commands an army and a destiny. Together with Antony and Lepidus, Octavian forms the Second Triumvirate, a three-man rule with near-absolute power. They divide provinces like merchants dividing spoils, and they unleash proscriptions, lists of enemies marked for death. Senators flee, citizens hide, Rome drowns in fear. Among the fallen is Cicero, the great orator, who once defended the Republic with words sharper than swords. His severed head, tradition says, is displayed on the rostra. You pause, shivering slightly. This is what the Republic has become, not a community of laws, but a battlefield of vengeance. But alliances never hold in Rome. Soon, Octavian and Antony are rivals. Antony drifts east, enthralled by Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, her ships gliding like swans on the Nile. Rome buzzes with scandalous rumors, feasts of excess, Antony dressed as a god, Cleopatra crowned as Isis reborn. Whether exaggerated or not, the imagery fuels Octavian's propaganda. He casts himself as the defender of Roman virtue against Antony's Eastern decadence. You can almost hear him whispering to the Senate, "Choose me or choose ruin." The showdown comes at Actium in 31 BCE. The sea foams with ships, sails straining, oars slapping. Octavian's Admiral Agrippa maneuvers with ruthless skill, hemming Antony and Cleopatra in. As battle rages, Cleopatra's flagship turns, retreating, and Antony follows. Their forces collapse, and the Mediterranean belongs to Octavian. The lovers flee to Egypt, where they die, Cleopatra by the asp, Antony by his own sword, leaving Octavian unchallenged. And so, in 27 BCE, Octavian takes a new name, Augustus. He does not call himself king, Rome still hates the word, but he gathers all powers into his hands, commander of armies, controller of provinces, guardian of laws. He cloaks monarchy in republican forms, letting the Senate exist, but hollowing it of real power. First citizen, he calls himself, but in truth, he is emperor. Historians still wonder whether this was a brilliant act of the skies or a genuine compromise. What is clear is that Augustus stabilizes Rome at last. Walk the streets of his city now, and you see order. Temples gleam, roads stretch farther than ever, aqueducts pour clean water into fountains. Augustus boasts that he found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble, and as you gaze at the shining facades, you must admit he was not exaggerating much. Laws are reformed, armies are stationed at frontiers instead of within Italy, and peace, pax, settles over the republic, now empire. Symbols shift too. The image of Augustus spreads across coins and statues, his calm face gazing eternally forward. Festivals honor him. Poets like Virgil weave his reign into myth, crafting the Aeneid to give Rome a noble lineage stretching back to Troy. Augustus is not just a man, he is the embodiment of Rome itself, eternal and divine. And yet, beneath the marble, contradictions remain. Power is concentrated in one man's hands, no matter how carefully disguised. The Senate bows, the people cheer, but the Republic is gone. Still, after decades of chaos, few complain. Augustus has done what no one else could. He has ended the cycle of civil war. You breathe in the stillness of this new era. Rome has transformed, its restless wolf tamed into an imperial lion. No longer merely a republic bound by laws and offices, it has become an empire bound by the will of one man. The age of Augustus dawns, and with it begins a long stretch of peace the world will remember as the Pax Romana.
You drift now into an age that feels strangely calm compared to the storms before. Civil wars fade into memory, daggers in the Senate sheath themselves, and Rome basks in a long golden light, the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. It is not peace everywhere, of course. Legions still march on distant frontiers, and rebellions still flicker. But for the heart of the empire, from Spain to Syria, from Gaul to Egypt, there is a steadiness, a rhythm of life that allows art, trade, and culture to flourish. Imagine strolling through the Forum under Augustus. Marble temples gleam white against the sky, their columns etched with dedication to Jupiter, Mars, or Venus. Arches rise in honor of victories, fountains splash cool water into basins, and citizens in flowing togas move between markets, baths, and law courts. The air carries the hum of commerce, merchants hawking olive oil, silks, and spices from across the seas. Children chase each other between statues, while philosophers argue in shaded porticos. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the empire breathing, steady and confident. The emperors after Augustus strive to keep this rhythm. Some succeed, others stumble. Tiberius, dour and suspicious, rules with caution but withdraws into seclusion. Caligula bursts onto the stage with extravagance, turning excess into scandal. Historians still wonder which tales are true. Did he really try to make his horse a consul, or is it satire gone wild? Claudius, underestimated as weak, surprises everyone by expanding the empire into Britain. Nero, infamous for cruelty, presides over Rome's great fire, fiddling in rumor while flames consume the city. You might smile wryly here. Every family, it seems, has its black sheep, and the Julio-Claudian dynasty is no exception. And yet, Rome endures. The Flavians rebuild after the fire, raising the Colosseum, where gladiators clash before roaring crowds. Picture yourself there, seated among 50,000 citizens, the air heavy with dust and excitement. A lion charges from the gate, a gladiator lifts his shield, and the crowd erupts with cries for blood or mercy. It is brutal, yes, but to Romans, it is also entertainment, a reminder of strength, discipline, and fate. Outside the arena, daily life flourishes. The aqueducts carry clean water across miles of countryside, pouring it into fountains where citizens gather. Baths become centers of social life, warm halls filled with steam, laughter, and gossip. Roman law develops further, clarifying rights, contracts, and property, weaving order across the empire. Roads extend ever outward, carrying merchants, soldiers, and ideas. They say all roads lead to Rome, and as you stand on one, stretching straight into the horizon, you feel the truth of it. This city has become the center of a world. And yet, even in peace, challenges remain. Provinces strain under taxation, soldiers grumble for higher pay, and emperors must balance generosity with control. Historians still wonder whether the Pax Romana was truly peace or simply a pause held by iron discipline. After all, legions patrol borders constantly, stamping out revolts in Judea, pushing against Germanic tribes, fortifying the Rhine and the Danube. The peace inside is bought by ceaseless vigilance outside. Still, Rome glows in this era. Literature flourishes. Virgil's Aeneid, Ovid's playful verses, Livy's sweeping history. Architecture soars. Pantheon domes, triumphal arches, basilicas filled with mosaics. The city hums with confidence, as though the gods themselves walk its streets. Citizens begin to believe Rome is eternal, that no force can topple what has been built in marble, law, and blood. As you stand in the Forum at sunset, torches flickering against white stone, you sense both grandeur and fragility. Rome is at its height, yet heights are precarious. The emperors who follow, Trajan, Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius, will push the empire to its greatest extent, but even then, shadows will gather on the edges. For now, though, you rest in the golden glow of peace, hearing the chatter of markets, the splash of fountains, the distant cheer from the Colosseum. The Republic is long gone, but Rome has become something new, a machine of order and spectacle, prosperity and control, power and art. The Pax Romana is a rare breath in the long history of storms, and you savor it while it lasts, knowing that beyond the horizon, challenges await.
You rise with the dawn on a Roman road. The stones cool beneath your sandals, stretching straight as an arrow toward the horizon. These roads, cut through forests and hills, over marshes and rivers, are the veins of the empire, built not for wanderers, but for legions. Yet merchants, pilgrims, and even gossip travel them just as swiftly. All roads lead to Rome, yes, but they also lead Rome outward, stitching together provinces into something that feels, at last, like a single body. Pause for a moment to admire the engineering. Surveyors mark the line with astonishing precision. Laborers dig deep foundations. Layers of gravel and stone are laid, topped with slabs so tightly fitted you can still walk on them 2 millennia later. A soldier marching 20 miles a day owes his blistered feet to Roman efficiency. You might chuckle softly. Civilization really is just a fancy word for good infrastructure. Beside the roads, aqueducts stride across valleys on towering arches, bringing water from distant hills. Picture the Aqua Claudia, 20 miles of stone channeling fresh water into fountains, baths, and homes. It is not only engineering, but a statement. Rome has the power to command nature itself. Citizens bathe daily, dine with clean water, and gossip in steam-filled halls, luxuries rare in the ancient world. And yet, Rome's true gift may be less visible than stone. It is law. Roman law, etched into tablets, debated in courts, carried into provinces, binds the empire more firmly than iron. Contracts, property, citizenship, these concepts travel from Britain to Syria, ensuring that a merchant in Antioch can trust the same legal principles as one in Gaul. Historians still wonder how much of this was deliberate policy or pragmatic habit, but the effect is enduring. Even today, echoes of Roman law hum in our courts. Culture thrives alongside infrastructure. Philosophy, once Greek, now walks Roman streets in Latin dress. Stoicism finds fertile ground. Seneca, advising emperors, speaks of virtue and control. Epictetus, once a slave, teaches that freedom lies within the mind. You lean closer, listening to Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, writing by lamplight in his tent. You have power over your mind, not outside events. His words carry across centuries, reminding you that Rome's might was not only in legions, but in thought. Symbols saturate daily life. Coins clink in the markets, stamped with imperial faces. Temples smoke with offerings to Jupiter, Juno, Mars. But quietly, new gods whisper their way in. Eastern cults, Mithras from Persia, Isis from Egypt, find followers in Roman streets. Even a small, persecuted sect, speaking of a crucified savior, begins to spread, unnoticed for now, but destined to shake the empire's soul. Walk with me into a bustling provincial town. In Gaul, amphitheaters rise. In Africa, mosaics gleam. In the East, Greek blends with Latin. Rome is not a uniform culture, but a patchwork, stitched together by stone, law, and legions. Each province brings something new: wine, grain, marble, soldiers. And in return, Rome offers order. Some grumble under taxes, yes, but many find peace compared to the chaos before Roman rule. You might sigh here. It's an empire, not a charity, but for many, the bargain works. Still, cracks show. Provinces feel distant from Rome's marble splendor, emperors grow suspicious of governors with too much wealth, and soldiers on the frontier begin to see their loyalty more with their commanders than the Senate. Historians still debate whether Rome's cohesion was genuine unity or just the illusion of it, held together by the promise of order and the threat of force. As evening falls, torches light the roads, their flames flickering against stone milestones that mark distance from the capital. You look down at the inscription, Roma Caput Mundi, Rome, the head of the world. And in this age, it feels true. Its roads and aqueducts pulse with life. Its laws bind a vast and varied people. Its philosophies echo across empires yet unborn. But remember, even the strongest arches one day crack. Even the straightest roads can crumble. For now, though, the empire stands tall, its infrastructure and ideas as enduring as the marble in its temples. The Pax Romana still holds, but the horizon darkens with storms. Soon, emperors will fall like dominoes, and the so-called eternal city will tremble.
You stand now at the edge of calm and chaos, the twilight of the Pax Romana. The marble still gleams in the forum, aqueducts still carry water, and roads still stretch outward. But the rhythm falters. It begins not with a single disaster, but with a drumbeat of crises, plagues, invasions, and emperors who rise and fall faster than statues can be carved. This is the 3rd century, and Rome staggers as though struck by too many blows at once. Imagine the legions straining on every frontier. To the north, Germanic tribes press across the Rhine and Danube, hungry for land and plunder. To the east, the Sassanid Persians rise, fierce and disciplined, pushing into Roman territory with ambitions to rival Caesar's conquests. At home, provinces erupt in revolt, governors declaring themselves emperors. You can almost laugh bitterly. It seems everyone with a few legions and a bold speech suddenly believes Rome should be theirs. Historians still wonder if these usurpers truly dreamed of saving Rome or merely of wearing its crown of power. The emperors themselves flicker like candle flames in the wind. In one 50-year span, over 20 men claim the purple, most of them dying by assassination or battle. Coins are minted with their faces, only to become relics by the next year. Soldiers grow restless, swearing loyalty to whoever promises the highest pay. The Senate, once Rome's anchor, has long since become decoration, its authority hollow. The real power rests in the camps, in the swords of legionaries. Meanwhile, a plague sweeps through the empire, thinning both armies and cities. Crops wither, trade slows, and the once bustling markets grow quieter. Imagine walking through a Roman town where half the stalls stand empty, aqueducts run sluggish, and once proud villas crumble from neglect. The grandeur of Rome now feels fragile, stretched thin across a world too vast to control. Yet even in crisis, resilience flickers. Some emperors fight with unexpected brilliance. Aurelian, the restorer of the world, claws back lost provinces, reunites splintering regions, and builds a massive wall around Rome itself. The Aurelian walls, still standing in parts today. Gallienus reforms the army, creating mobile cavalry units to fight sudden invasions. These efforts are patchwork, but they keep Rome alive. You might shake your head softly here. No matter how often Rome stumbles, it refuses to fall outright. Culture, too, bends under pressure. Art grows harsher, more symbolic, less about beauty and more about message. Statues of emperors loom stern, their eyes carved large, gazing not at the present but into eternity, as though trying to outstare decline. Religion shifts as well. Old gods feel distant, their temples echoing but less convincing. Eastern cults surge in popularity, promising personal salvation in a world that feels uncertain. Among them, Christianity begins to gather more followers, spreading quietly from city to city despite persecution. Historians still debate whether its growth was inevitable or whether the empire's crises gave it the opening it needed. But either way, its roots deepen. Daily life carries on stubbornly. Farmers still till soil, bakers still knead bread, children still play in alleys. Yet the sense of security fades. Taxes grow heavier, inflation bites, coins once silver now feel thin and debased. Citizens hoard goods, barter replaces coin, and trust in institutions wanes. It feels as though the Republic's ghost hovers over the empire, whispering that even marble cannot last forever. Picture the Forum again at dusk, torches flickering, senators bickering over scraps of influence, soldiers drilling outside the walls, merchants haggling nervously. Rome is still magnificent, but it is no longer invincible. The crisis of the 3rd century does not destroy it outright, but it leaves scars, deep and lasting. And yet, as often before, the city prepares to transform. In the distance, a strong hand will emerge, an emperor determined to tame the chaos, to rebuild order, to divide and reorganize what has grown too vast. His name will be Diocletian, and with him, Rome will attempt a rebirth.
You step into a Rome gasping from the wounds of its long crisis, when emperors toppled like dice and frontiers burned like tinder. Out of this chaos rises a figure of granite resolve, Diocletian. He is not born of senatorial lineage or noble houses, but of humble Dalmatian stock, a soldier hardened by campaigns. Perhaps that is what Rome needs most now, not another aristocrat wrapped in tradition, but a commander who understands discipline, order, and survival. Diocletian looks at the sprawling empire and sees what many feared to admit: it is too vast for one man to rule. So he does what few emperors dared before: he shares power. He divides the empire into east and west, appointing a co-emperor, Maximian, to govern beside him. Beneath them, 2 junior emperors, Caesars, are chosen, forming a tetrarchy, a rule of 4. Imagine the map of the Roman world now, no longer centered on one city, but on multiple capitals, like torches set along a vast road. Historians still debate whether this was genius or desperation, but for a time, it works. Borders are guarded, rebellions quelled, the machine of state steadies itself. Reforms sweep across the empire. Taxes are systematized, provinces reorganized, armies reinforced. Diocletian issues the Edict on Maximum Prices, a desperate attempt to halt runaway inflation by fixing wages and costs. You might shake your head gently. It was as futile as trying to hold back the tide with a broom, but it shows the scale of the problem Rome faced. Even so, the reforms bring breathing space, a structure sturdy enough to outlast him. Religion, too, feels his heavy hand. For centuries, Rome tolerated a mosaic of gods, welcoming new cults alongside old deities. But Diocletian, zealous for unity, launches the Great Persecution against Christians. Churches are burned, scriptures seized, believers imprisoned or executed. And yet, paradoxically, the faith only spreads faster, its martyrs remembered with reverence. Historians still wonder whether Diocletian understood the futility of his campaign or believed he could truly snuff out the growing flame. After Diocletian, another figure towers even larger: Constantine. Where Diocletian sought order, Constantine seizes destiny. In 312 CE, on the eve of battle for control of Rome, he sees a vision. Whether miracle or clever propaganda remains debated. A cross of light in the sky, and words, "In hoc signo vinces," in this sign you will conquer. He paints the Christian symbol on his soldiers' shields, marches into battle at the Milvian Bridge, and emerges victorious. Constantine attributes his triumph to the Christian God, and with that, the empire tilts forever. He issues the Edict of Milan in 313 CE, granting tolerance to Christianity. No longer a hunted sect, it begins to weave into the fabric of state. Bishops gather in councils, churches rise with imperial funds, and crosses replace idols in temples. You walk into a Roman basilica now and no longer see Jupiter's altar, but a Christian pulpit, incense curling heavenward. It feels like a different Rome entirely, one where faith is not just tolerated, but celebrated. Historians still wonder whether Constantine's conversion was heartfelt devotion or shrewd politics, but either way, it reshapes Rome's soul. And Constantine does more still. He shifts the empire's weight eastward, founding a new capital at Byzantium, renamed Constantinople, City of Constantine. Rising on the Bosporus, it gleams with new walls, palaces, and forums. From here, the Eastern Empire will endure long after the Western half crumbles. You might pause here to reflect. Even in its twilight, Rome plants seeds of survival. Yet beneath the marble and the crosses, tension lingers. Old pagan traditions clash with new Christian fervor. Soldiers still defend borders, but enemies grow stronger. The division of East and West ensures survival in the short term, but it also foreshadows separation.
As night falls over the basilicas of Constantine's Rome, you sense a profound shift. This is no longer the same city born of Romulus and Remus, nor the Republic of Senators, nor even the imperial city of Augustus. Rome has transformed again, still powerful, still enduring, but carrying a different heart. The gods of Olympus fade, the cross rises, and the eternal city remakes itself for a new age.
You wander now through streets where temples stand half empty, their altars cold, while churches ring with hymns. Rome has survived Diocletian and embraced Constantine, but the balance tips. The Western Empire begins to falter. The marble still gleams, the aqueducts still flow, yet you feel the tremor beneath the cobblestones. This is the age of decline, not sudden collapse, but a slow erosion, like stone worn by relentless rain. The first cracks appear on the frontiers. Germanic tribes press harder against the Rhine and Danube. Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Vandals, and Franks. Some come as raiders, but others come seeking refuge, driven by pressure from the Huns sweeping westward. Imagine the long caravans, wagons creaking, families trudging, warriors clutching spears. Not only invaders, but migrants, hungry for land. Rome, stretched thin, grudgingly allows some to settle, offering them farmland in exchange for military service. Historians still debate whether this was pragmatism or desperation, but the line between ally and enemy blurs dangerously. The army itself changes. Once composed of disciplined citizen soldiers, now it leans heavily on mercenaries, foederati, from beyond the borders. These warriors fight bravely, but their loyalty lies more with gold and leaders than with Rome itself. You might shake your head softly here. When an empire must hire outsiders to guard its gates, the gates are already creaking. Internally, corruption gnaws. Senators bicker, emperors rise and fall in quick succession, many little more than puppets of generals or palace guards. Taxes grow crushing, coinage debases further, trade dwindles. Ordinary Romans grumble, some abandoning cities for rural estates, seeking safety in isolation rather than community. The very fabric of civic life, the pride of being Roman, frays. And then comes the shock of 410 CE. The Visigoths, led by Alaric, march into Rome itself. Imagine the horror as gates fall, torches flare, and the eternal city is sacked for the first time in 8 centuries. Gold and treasures are looted, citizens enslaved or slain. Though the city survives, the illusion of invincibility is shattered. Augustine, in North Africa, writes The City of God, to remind Christians that no earthly empire is eternal. You might whisper along, the wolf that once devoured the world has grown old. The Vandals follow decades later, storming across Spain into Africa, seizing Carthage itself, the city Rome once destroyed. In 455, they sail to Italy and sack Rome again. The word Vandal will echo forever as a synonym for destruction. The humiliation is complete. Rome, which once ruled the seas, now watches foreign sails in its own harbors. And yet, the Eastern Empire, Constantinople, still stands strong, wealthy, and fortified. The division that Diocletian began now shows its consequence. While the East endures, the West staggers. Historians still wonder whether a united empire could have survived, or whether the West was always doomed by geography, wealth, and relentless invasions. Daily life grows harsher. The grand games and the Colosseum fade, the baths fall silent, aqueducts crumble. Citizens huddle in shrinking towns, clinging to traditions even as institutions collapse. Bishops rise in authority where senators falter. The church becoming a refuge of order amid the chaos. Christianity, once persecuted, now carries the torch of Roman identity, a paradox no one in Augustus's day could have imagined. You stand once more in the Forum,
but it is quieter now. Grass creeps between stones, statues topple, columns crack. The Senate still meets, but its voice carries little weight. Outside the gates, barbarian warlords eye the city not with awe, but with opportunity. And in 476 CE, the inevitable comes. The last Western Empire, Romulus Augustulus, ironically bearing the names of both Rome's founder and its first emperor, is deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. No grand battle, no fiery collapse, just a quiet dismissal, a boy emperor sent into obscurity. The Western Roman Empire, after more than 1,000 years of struggle and triumph, is gone. But pause before you mourn too deeply. Rome does not vanish, it transforms. Its language, its law, its faith, its roads, even its ruins endure. And in the East, in Constantinople, emperors still rule for another 1,000 years, calling themselves Romans. The legacy is not of ashes, but of adaptation. As night falls over this fading city, you sense both sorrow and continuity. The wolf lies weary, but its offspring roam everywhere. In languages, in cathedrals, in legal codes, in stories whispered at night. Rome the empire may crumble, but Rome the idea endures.
You linger now in the ruins, but do not be deceived. Ruins are not endings, they are bridges. The Western Empire may have fallen in 476 CE, yet the spirit of Rome does not vanish into silence. Instead, it seeps into the soil of Europe, carried forward by law, language, and memory. You walk slowly through broken arches and toppled columns, listening for echoes. They are everywhere. First, in the East, Constantinople rises as the new Rome, its walls towering, its domes gleaming, its emperors calling themselves Basileus Romaion, emperors of the Romans. For 1,000 years after the West's fall, the Byzantine Empire preserves Roman governance, art, and law. Justinian, in the 6th century, codifies centuries of Roman statutes into the Corpus Juris Civilis, a body of law that still whispers in the codes of modern nations. You might smile softly here. Lawyers today still speak, unknowingly, in Roman tongues. In the West, the so-called barbarian kingdoms rise, Ostrogoths, Visigoths, Franks, but they do not erase Rome. They borrow its trappings. Kings wear Roman titles, rule from Roman cities, and adopt Roman faith. Latin lingers, reshaping itself into French, Spanish, Italian. The very words on your lips today carry Rome's cadence. Historians still wonder whether this was continuity or merely nostalgia, but in either case, Rome lives on. The Church, too, becomes Rome's heir. Bishops of Rome claim authority as popes, building their power on the ruins of empire. Cathedrals rise where temples once stood. Processions wind where triumphs once marched. The cross, once the symbol of persecution, becomes the heart of Christendom, carried on banners across Europe. And yet, behind it all, you sense the rhythm of old Rome, the rituals, the hierarchy, the discipline, cloaked now in sacred robes. Even beyond Europe, Rome's legacy spreads. Roads laid by legionaries guide medieval travelers. Aqueducts inspire new engineers. Roman architecture, with its arches and domes, reappears in Renaissance palaces and modern capitals alike. Step into Washington, D.C., London, or Paris, and you will find columns and domes whispering Rome's grandeur, as though the empire never fully died. And in imagination, Rome never fades. Writers, painters, and dreamers return again and again to its myths. Romulus and Remus, Caesar's ambition, Augustus' marble city. Historians still debate whether Rome's greatness lay in conquest, culture, or endurance, but perhaps the truest answer is that it lay in its ability to become a story that no generation could resist retelling. As you wander once more through the Forum, grass swaying where senators once debated, you notice the moonlight bathing the ruins in silver. They do not seem dead. They seem eternal, guardians of memory. The Republic, the Empire, the Church, the nations of Europe all trace their roots to this soil. Rome has fallen, yes, but it also endures everywhere you look. And so the journey comes full circle, from a wolf nursing abandoned twins to an empire straddling continents, from kings to republic, republic to empire, empire to ruin, and ruin to legacy. Rome's story is not one of simple rise and fall. It is a tale of transformation, of survival in disguise, of an idea too large to die. Now let your breathing slow as the echoes of Rome soften around you. Picture the marble arches fading into mist, the clash of legions quieting into distant murmurs, the torches of the Forum dwindling into fireflies. The city that once never slept grows hushed, its stones warm from the sun, cooling under a blanket of night. You no longer hear the cries of triumph or the whispers of conspiracies. Instead, you hear the steady trickle of a fountain, a sound as old as Rome itself. It soothes the streets, washing away the dust of battles, the weight of ambition, the sorrows of decline. Citizens melt into shadows, senators into silence, and emperors into memory. Allow yourself to drift with them, gently into rest. The roads that once carried legions now stretch quietly into fields of dreams. The aqueducts, once straining with rushing water, are calm rivers flowing into your sleep. The Colosseum, once a roar of blood and spectacle, is now an empty bowl holding only moonlight. And yet, behind it all, you remember that Rome endures not in marble alone, but in thought, in law, in story. And stories, once told, never truly end. They linger, they soften, they comfort. You have walked through centuries tonight, but now it is time to leave the city to its slumber and claim your own. So breathe deeply, let the ruins grow still, let the wolf curl at your side, and let the cross shimmer faintly on the horizon. Rome has given you its story, now it gives you rest. And now, you may drift into dreams of history.